Now shall we turn in our Bibles to Psalm 103. I'll read the odd-numbered verses. Pastor John will lead the congregation in the even-numbered verses. And shall we stand as we read God's word? Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name.
Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits.
Who forgiveth all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy diseases.
Who redeemeth thy life from destruction, who crowneth thee with loving kindness and tender mercies.
Who satisfieth thy mouth with good things, so that thy youth is renewed like the eagles.
The Lord executeth righteousness and judgment for all that are oppressed.
And he made known his ways unto Moses, and his acts unto the children of Israel.
The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and plenteous in mercy.
He will not always chide, and neither will he keep his anger forever.
He hath not dealt with us after our sins, nor rewarded us according to our iniquities.
For as the heaven is high above the earth, so great is his mercy toward them that fear him.
As far as the east is from the west, so far hath he removed our transgressions from us.
Like as a father pitieth his children, so the Lord pitieth them that fear him.
For he knoweth our frame, he remembereth that we are dust.
As for man, his days are as grass. As a flower of the field, so he flourisheth.
For the wind passeth over it, and it is gone, and the place thereof shall know it no more.
But the mercy of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting upon them that fear him, and his righteousness unto children's children.
To such as keep his covenant, and to those that remember his commandments to do them.
The Lord hath prepared his throne in the heavens, and his kingdom ruleth over all.
Bless the Lord, ye his angels, that excel in strength, that do his commandments, hearkening unto the voice of his word.
Bless ye the Lord, all ye his host, ye ministers of his that do his pleasure.
Bless the Lord, all his works in all places of his dominion. Bless the Lord, O my soul.
These last few verses where I sort of see David as a conductor of a great orchestra. And he's calling the various parts to join in this great crescendo, signaling in the brass section, signaling in the string section, where he sort of calls us all together, note there, bless the Lord, ye his angels that excel in strength, that do his commandments, hearkening to his word. Bless the Lord, all ye host, ye ministers of his, and he's calling them all in for this blessing. Bless the Lord, all his works in all places, in all his dominions, and with this great praise going up, David just sort of bows and says, oh, bless the Lord, oh my soul. I mean, just all together, and just the praising of the Lord. Let's open our hearts now. Father, we come to you this day to bless your holy name and to join with all creation in lifting our voices in praise, thanksgiving, and blessings, Lord, unto you. Truly, Lord, you are worthy to receive all of the glory and the praise and the honor of your people because you have loved us. You've redeemed us. You've forgiven us our transgressions. You've shown your mercy and your grace unto us in such manifold measure. Lord, we bless you this day. Touch now, we pray, our hearts through the word. Open our hearts to receive. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You may be seated. As we continue our journey through the Bible this week, we've come to 2 Chronicles 33 and 34. And so we would encourage you to read these over and join with us tonight as we gather together to worship the Lord. And Pastor John will be leading us in his commentary on these chapters this evening. John has written a commentary on the whole Bible, and it is a fabulous commentary. And so it will be a joy to have John share with us tonight chapters 33 and 34. This morning, I'd like to draw your attention to chapter 33. Let's begin with verse 11. Speaking of Manasseh, the king. And because of his wickedness, his evil, wherefore the Lord brought upon them the captains of the host of the kings of Assyria, which took Manasseh among the thorns, bound him with fetters, and carried him to Babylon. And when he was in affliction, he besought the Lord his God, and he humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers. And he prayed unto him, and he was entreated of him. And he heard his supplication, and he brought him again to Jerusalem into his kingdom. And then Manasseh knew that Jehovah, he was God. There are many people who really do not know the scriptures, who sort of see two different gods revealed in the Bible. The God, they say, of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament, and they seem to think that they are different. I've heard people say, well, I really like the God of the New Testament. I like that love and forgiveness and all of the God of the New Testament. And that God of the Old Testament sort of scares me. As though there were two gods that are being revealed in the Bible. The God of the Old Testament is the God of the New Testament. They are one and the same. And if you will carefully study the scriptures, you'll find that they are the same nature, the same character. The God of the Old Testament is a loving and gracious God, but he is just. In the psalm that we read this morning, David said, "The Lord is merciful and gracious. He is slow to anger. He's plenteous in mercy. He's not dealt with us after our sins, nor rewarded us according to our iniquities. For as the heaven is high above the earth, so great is his mercy toward them that fear him." When God revealed himself to Moses, it was right after the coming into the camp with the two tables of stone upon which God had engraven the Ten Commandments. And as Moses and Joshua approached the camp, they heard the singing and the celebrating. And Joshua didn't understand what the noise was all about. And Moses said, things aren't good. As they came into the camp, they found that the people had made this golden image. And they were worshiping the golden calf, and they were dancing around it. The very first commandment on these two tables of stone was, "Thou shalt have no other God before me." And here they were worshiping a golden calf. Moses, in his consternation, took the two tables of stone, threw them on the ground, and they broke in pieces, a symbol of the law that was broken by the people before they could even give them the Ten Commandments. They had already broken the covenant with God. So Moses returned to the mountain. And God met with Moses the second time. We read in Exodus 34:5, and Jehovah descended in the cloud, and he stood with Moses there. And he proclaimed the name of Jehovah. And Jehovah passed by before him and proclaimed, Jehovah, Jehovah God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering, and abundant in goodness and truth. The people had violated the law of God. They deserved the judgment of God. But as God proclaims himself to Moses, he declares that he is merciful, that he is gracious, that he is long-suffering, that he's abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy to the thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. The God of the New Testament, of course, is a loving God. He is a gracious God, but he also is just. We read in the New Testament, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever would believe in him would not perish but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. Again, we read when Jesus was talking to the woman taken in the very act of adultery that the Pharisees wanted to stone. He said to her, neither do I condemn you. Go your way and sin no more. Gracious, merciful. Jesus said, as the Father has loved me, so love I you, a loving God. Jesus, however, said to the Pharisees, you serpents, you generation of vipers, how can you escape the damnation of hell? Paul declared in Romans 1:18, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all unrighteousness of men who hold the truth of God in unrighteousness. Again he wrote, but your hard and impenitent heart is treasuring up unto yourselves wrath in the day of wrath and the revelation of the righteous judgment of God. The book of Revelation from chapter 6 through chapter 18 gives in great detail the descriptions of the judgment of God when he pours out his wrath upon this Christ-rejecting world, which I believe will be very soon. In Revelation chapter 6, beginning with verse 12, John said, I beheld, when he had opened the sixth seal, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell into the earth, even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it's rolled together. Every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the chief captains, the mighty men, every bondman, every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains, fall on us, hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who shall be able to stand? And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receives his mark in his forehead and or his right hand, the same will drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which will be poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he will be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends up forever and ever, and they have no rest, day nor night, who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receives the mark of his name. In the book of Hebrews, we read, "For if we sin willfully, after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remains no more sacrifice for sins, but a certain fearful looking for the judgment and fiery indignation of God, which will devour his adversaries. He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much worse punishment do you suppose he shall receive who has trodden under foot the Son of God and counted the blood of the covenant wherewith he was sanctified an unholy thing, who has done despite to the Spirit of grace? For we know him who has said, 'Vengeance belongs to me. I will repay, saith the Lord.' And again, 'The Lord shall judge his people.'" And then the writer makes a comment. He said, "It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of a living God." Now that's New Testament, speaking of the wrath of God and the judgment of God. Yes, they both reveal to us a God who is loving, a God who is gracious, a God who is merciful, a God who is forgiving. But they both also relate to us the truth of a God who is a just God, a God who punishes evil and evildoers. So the God of the Old Testament is indeed the same as the God of the New Testament. Now this brings us to the story of King Manasseh. Though his father Hezekiah was a very godly man and had led the nation in a spiritual reform to serve the Lord, his son Manasseh was the most evil of all of the kings. He led the nation into the greatest depravity and rebellion against God of any king. Under his reign, the nation went down to the very depths of moral depravity. The Bible tells us the list of his evil deeds. It tells us that there was no king that was more evil than he was, that he was practicing the very practices of the pagan people that had lived in the land before Israel came to conquer the land. The things that they were doing that provoked God to destroy them out of the land, he was doing. He built again the high places where they had erected altars to the pagan gods. He built again the altars of Baalim. He made groves, that is, places where they worshiped the goddess Ashtoreth in licentious fertility rites. He practiced astrology. He desecrated the temple by building altars to the pagan gods even within the temple itself. He sacrificed his own children by placing them in the bonfires that were built for the god Molech and Baal. It was the pagan custom to take your children and to offer them as a sacrifice to these gods, and he offered his own sons as sacrifices to these pagan gods. He practiced sorcery, and he was into witchcraft. He worshiped Satan. He would not listen to the prophets of God who warned him to turn from his evil ways. And he led the whole nation away from God and in rebellion against the laws of the Lord. He had crossed over the line and had done every evil thing imaginable. Finally, God sent his prophets to declare to him, because Manasseh, the king of Judah, has done these abominations and has done more wicked things than all of the Amorites ever did, which were before him. And he has made Judah also to sin with his idols. Therefore, thus saith Jehovah, God of Israel, behold, I am bringing such evil upon Jerusalem and Judah, that whoever hears of it, their ears will tingle. I will stretch over Jerusalem the line of Samaria and the plummet of the house of Ahab. And I will wipe Jerusalem as a man wipes a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down. And I will forsake the remnant of my inheritance and deliver them to be the hand of their enemies, and they shall become a prey and a spoil to their enemies. Because they have done that which was evil in my sight, they've provoked me to anger since the day their fathers came forth out of Egypt, even till this day. Moreover, Manasseh has shed very much innocent blood, until he's filled Jerusalem with blood from one end to another, beside his sin wherewith he made Judah to sin, in doing that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. Talking about the reign of this man Manasseh, filling Jerusalem with innocent blood, more evil than anyone who had ever come along. And thus the judgment of God is being pronounced by the prophets. He caused the nation to cross over the line from which there was no return. As the result of his reign, the judgment of God must come upon the nation. They've gone too far. His son Josiah, as we will discover tonight, was a fairly decent young man. And he did bring a spiritual reform, but it was only surface. As soon as he died, they plunged right back into the evil practices of Manasseh. We read that as a result of his sin, therefore, the Assyrians came and they took him among the thorns, and they bound him and carried him to Babylon. That phrase, they took him among the thorns. The word thorns in the Hebrew is a piercing. And it was the custom of the Assyrians. When they would conquer an area, they would repopulate the people into other areas. And they would lead them away as captives by putting a ring through the septum portion of the nose, and then a chain attached to it, and they would pull them along. And of course, you'd want to keep up, because that would be a very painful thing to try and stop while they were pulling you with this chain, with this ring through your nose. Or they would put the ring through the lower lip. Now, many of the pictures that have been found by the archaeologists that dealt with the Assyrian Empire, they have pictures of the Assyrians with these chains holding and dragging these people with the rings through their nose or through their lips. And so we know that the biblical account here is accurate, that the pierced nose was, the king was, his nose was pierced, the ring that was inserted, and he was brought in this bondage to Babylon. Now, in the Chaldee account, it declares, for the Chaldeans made a brazen mule and they pierced it full of small holes, and they put him in it. And they kindled fires all around it. And when he was in this affliction, he sought the help of all of the idols which he had made, but he obtained none because they were of no value. He therefore repented and prayed before Jehovah his God, and was greatly humbled in the sight of Jehovah, the God of his fathers. Look what it took to bring this man to his knees, to bring him to repentance before the Lord. The great affliction, the torment, there inside of this brazen horse with little piercings and the fires that were built around it. And he, as he is suffering from the heat, cries unto the idols, the gods that he had been worshiping. And none of them, of course, could help him. And finally, broken, desperate, he cried out to the living God that he had rejected. But God was merciful and gracious to him. And God forgave him. And God brought him back to Jerusalem and placed him on the throne again. Now, if you were God and dealing with this fellow Manasseh, when he, out of this great affliction, finally repented and called upon you, what would you have said to him? I know what I would have said. You have made your own bed, you just lie in it. Don't call on me for help now. I refuse to be your last resort. You wouldn't listen to me. Why should I listen to you? But you see, the God of the Old Testament is a gracious God. He's a merciful God. He is a loving God. And even though this fellow had gone to the depths of evil and wickedness in his rebellion against God, yet when he finally turned and called upon God, God heard his prayer. God answered his prayer. God delivered him and placed him back on the throne once again. God is gracious. God is merciful. God is forgiving. The story of Manasseh, I believe, was given to us in order to give hope to every sinner. No matter how great your sin, how much you have tasted of the depths of sin, I doubt that your sin is anywhere near that of Manasseh, guilty of sacrificing his own children, putting them alive into the glowing arms of the little god Baal, and watching them roast to death, hearing their screams, but doing it as a sacrifice to his God. A man who had filled Jerusalem with innocent blood. A man who had turned the nation against the Lord. And yet, a man who, when in absolute desperation, when everything else failed, called upon God, and God heard him, and God forgave him. Surely, that should be an encouragement to us today, that God is a merciful God. And as high as the heavens are above the earth, so high is his mercy towards those who fear him. The prophet Joel said, "And whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Today, perhaps you, like Manasseh, are experiencing great affliction because of your sin. It has brought you into bondage. It has brought great pain to your life. Maybe it's cost you your family, your marriage. Maybe it's cost you a physical affliction. And you've sought for help, and there seems to be none. If, as Manasseh, you will call upon the Lord, you will find that he is a gracious, loving, forgiving God who pardons sin, who restores that which sin cost in the loss of the throne, the loss of his position. God can restore when you turn to him, as did Manasseh, with all of your heart. Maybe you've exhausted, as he did, all of his options. He called upon his gods, but they weren't able to help him. And so he finally called upon the true and the living God, and he found the help that he needed. Maybe it's time for you to call upon the name of the Lord today. If you do, you'll find, as Manasseh found, the Lord is forgiving, the Lord is gracious, and the Lord will forgive you. And he will place you in a position of reigning over sin rather than being ruled by sin. Our God is a gracious, loving, forgiving God. Let's pray. Father, how we thank you this day that you are so gracious, so loving, so forgiving. Even of this horrible man, Manasseh, so guilty of so many horrible evils. And yet, Lord, when he finally called, you answered. Lord, we pray that we won't have to get into that same desperate kind of situation that he was in. That we won't wait until we've been taken through the thorns and find ourselves bound and in the enemy's land. But Lord, today, while it is yet day, may we call upon you and find that you are there ready to heal, ready to forgive, ready to wrap your arms around us and wash and cleanse us from all of that defilement of sin. Ready to set us, Lord, in the family of God, upon the throne, that we might reign with you in your glorious kingdom. Lord, open our hearts now, that they might respond to the tugging of the Holy Spirit, and that we might come this day and receive the grace of God, the mercies of God, and the pardon and the cleansing of our sins. In Jesus' name, amen. Shall we stand? The pastors are down here at the front to pray for you today. And so if God has spoken to your heart, and maybe like Manasseh, you're beginning to experience some of the consequences of your sin. And it is painful. It does hurt. God wants this day, as he did with Manasseh, to restore you. Those things that your folly have cost you, those things that have been lost to you because of your tampering with sin. And so I would encourage you, as soon as we're dismissed, come on forward. Even as Manasseh found the forgiveness of God, so you will find the forgiveness of God. Even as he found God restoring him, so you can find God's restoration in your life today. What will it take to bring you to your knees? Manasseh was a stubborn man. It took an awful lot, but ultimately, on his knees, he found the answers. He found the forgiveness that he needed, even as you will. And so we would encourage you, open your heart and allow God's love and grace to minister to you today and experience forgiveness. May the Lord be with you. May he watch over and keep you this week. May you grow in his grace and in knowledge of his love as together we seek to serve the Lord and to follow after him. The Lord bless thee.
The Lord bless thee.
And keep thee.
And keep thee.
The Lord make his face to shine upon thee, and be gracious unto thee, and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up.
The Lord lift up
His countenance upon thee and give thee peace.
And now, on behalf of the Word for Today, the broadcast ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith, we thank you for joining us in today's broadcast. For more of Pastor Chuck's studies and biblical teaching resources, visit our website at pastorchuck.org. You can contact the Word for Today at The Word for Today, P.O. Box 890820, Temecula, California 92589. Or email us at infopastorchuck@gmail.com. We'll return with more of our verse-by-verse Bible study in our next broadcast with Pastor Chuck.